So hopefully those first two sessions were very helpful for you all. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, during the break, we did get a number of questions that came through, so we're going to, answer them all one by one. And if there are other questions that come along the way, feel free to just text 678-200-8996. Right now it is 4:30, so we'll go to 5:15, and hopefully we'll be able to get all your questions answered. Mm-hmm. Question number one.
That's my phone.
You want to set that up?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Question number one. How do you get your mate to make a family plan for the home, especially with children and with family? Okay, so great question. So one of the things that I do with all of our couples, and we've done in our own household, is we've created something called the color-coded calendar. The color-coded calendar. You want to write that down. And listen, before I even go any further, let me just give you all a gift. And usually when you give a gift to someone, if you don't receive the gift giver becomes offended because it's like you didn't place any value in the gift. I'm going to give you all a gift today, and that gift is a complimentary 60-minute coaching session for you two to ask any questions or to help deal with any specific issues that you're dealing with in your marriage. And through a one-on-one session through Skype, just you and your spouse and I, we'll be able to really identify some problems and help come up with some solutions that may benefit you. How many of you would like to receive that complimentary gift? 2 people. Okay. 3. Okay, very good. So the same number that I just gave you to text is the number that I need you to text me again and say, Hasani, I want a session, and we'll get it set up for you. All right? And the reason why I brought that up is because this is a little bit detailed. Like, I can give you a quick snippet of an answer, but there's no way that I can give a soundbite answer to such a deeply, intricate question. But just to answer your question, we have something called the color-coded calendar. The way this works is this. You take out a planner. We use Excel spreadsheet, and we look at every single day of the week. So Sunday through Saturday, we help you to identify what you're doing hour by hour throughout the course of that day. Because when you look at your calendar, you're going to realize, wow, I have a whole lot of time in my day that I really waste, I don't really take advantage of. So we help you to prioritize what to do throughout the course of your day. The reason why it's color-coded is because we have shared with certain couples what the priorities of their life should be. Now, if you look at work as a priority, God as a priority, family as a priority, marriage as a priority, and your personal time as a priority, those are 5 different categories or color classifications. So let's just say we made God blue. We made work or money green. We made marriage, pink or red for love. We made family orange. We made personal time white. I need you on a calendar from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed to identify the color associated with your activity for that particular day. So obviously if we're working jobs, the majority of our time is going to be in the work color or green. So you want to put all your green on your daily and weekly calendar. By doing this, you'll realize what free time you actually have. So you can begin to make time for prayer with God, meditation, devotion, reading the word. You can begin to make time for you and your partner. Most couples never date. They never spend quality time together on a weekly basis. And this, you can identify, okay, well, we have a free spot here and a free spot there. So we encourage you to use red or pink and put in those time slots that represent your family time. Couple time, excuse me. Same thing with the family. For us, Saturday is our family day. That's when we spend quality time with the family. And then we have our personal time on that calendar. By doing this, it creates a sense of balance. The reason why I say a sense of balance, because I don't know if it's there's any such thing as perfect balance. It's almost like a balancing act. Because if you're spending 8 hours on your job, fine, that's the quantity of time. But as long as you're giving your partner and your children and yourself quality time, even if it's significantly less, there's a sense of balance in your life, right? And so with each color category or with each priority, we work with couples to come up with a long list of things and to-dos that you would do in each category. So going back to the question of how you create a family plan, when dealing with the family, Danielle and I will have our 4 kids come to a table, we'll have a meeting, and we'll say, okay, what do we want to do this year as a family? And we'll create a long list. Okay, what extracurricular activities do you want to participate in? What vacation do you want to take? What things do you want to do on family day so that everybody feels as if they're getting their need met, in the household? And we write down that list, and now that we have that list, we can plan for the week to come what we're going to do on that particular day, because we have a list that we created that we can look at, right? We do the same thing for our marriage. We do the same thing for our goals on our job. We do the same thing for our personal time. And then I'll let you talk. One of the biggest issues I find with married couples is that they don't prioritize their own personal time.
Right.
You live your life for your spouse and your children, and in doing that, you lose your sense of self. You lose your self-expression, your individuality. So all the things you did before I do, which were great things, you no longer do because you feel as if, you feel a sense of guilt almost if you get a massage, just you and yourself. If you go to the gym just to de-stress, just you and yourself. You feel guilty doing what God has designed for you to do, and you suffer, once again, for the sake of your family. And there has to be perfect balance in every area of your life in order for your marriage to function.
Yeah, it goes back to knowing yourself. I personally know that I've always known that I'd like to be alone and need alone time. But once you get married and the children come and you have less and less of that time, your quality of life starts to go down for a personal reason. So not only do you have all the other outside things affecting you, now you're not really meeting your own personal need. There are different personality types. I need alone time. Some people don't like to be alone. Some people get all of their energy by being with groups of people or with family. So you got to know who you are. And then taking a step back from the calendar, what Hasani was talking about, obviously you're going to sit down together and you're going to put on that calendar all of the non-negotiable time slots, like your work and all those things that that cannot be moved around, like your children's schedule and school and things of that nature, and then plug in those things that are important. So if you're the type of person that doesn't live by a calendar and that's difficult for you, like scheduling yourself is difficult, this might seem confining, and you don't want to feel confined. So you do live by a schedule. Everybody lives by a schedule, whether that means you getting up at 7 a.m. because you got to get to work. But it's your free time a lot of times that we neglect to schedule and control our free time, what we do. So we've got all this free time that we just waste away, laying around in the house maybe, or just not prioritizing what you're supposed to be doing. So don't feel like I've got to regiment my entire life, if that's not what you're accustomed to doing. But plug in those essentials. So plug in the private or the date night. Plug in, the night where you're going to have sex. Plug in the time where you're going to pray with your family or with your kids. Just plug in those certain things, and then you can leave some flexible time where you can do whatever you want to do. That's for those free-spirited people that don't like being controlled and confined.
In addition to that, we encourage you to create what we call a family constitution. So when you and your spouse and your children get together, when you begin to identify what's important to you, what values you want to implement into your marriage, you put it in your family, you put it within a constitution, and you hang that constitution on the wall. Just like we live in the United States of America and we have a constitution, that is the law, the form of government that rules and runs this nation for the benefit of us all, ideally. That's what you should have in your home so that everyone benefits. And if something should not work, that's why you have something called the Declaration of Independence. I mean, think about it. The Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to serve these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that when any form of government is destructive to these ends, it is the will of the people to alter and to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them that seem fit for their safety and happiness. So these are the things that you must begin to do. When something's not working, create a new form of government, a new rule, a new amendment to now use within that marriage so that things begin to work. Now, can you guys still see me? Can you see me okay? Can you hear me? Okay, because I just had something that popped up that I want to get rid of on my screen. I wasn't sure we disconnected. So give me 1 second. There we go. We're back. All right. So hopefully that helps. A family constitution is very, very, very critical. Just to give you an example, there's a phenomenal book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the principles in that book is to create a mission statement. So in this particular book, they talk about how when corporations come together, from the president all the way down to, say, the janitorial staff, everybody comes together and they're all given their input in what they believe the company needs to have in terms of a mission statement. Well, why is that more beneficial than the higher up management passing down policy to their, employees? Well, you lose a sense of ownership. If I'm constantly being told from upper management how things have to be, I'm like, well, they're out of touch. They're in some lofty office. They don't know what's going on our floor. They don't know, we're connected to the people. We're connected to the customer. Why don't they get our input? This allows all members of the organization to share and create something that works for everyone. Likewise with your family. If you have little ones, our children go all the way down to 5 years old, but they're human beings. They have interests, they have perspective, and so we consider all those things as we establish a form of government for the home. Now, the way the question was asked was, I want my spouse to create a plan. Well, therein lies the problem. Don't wait for your spouse to do anything. We need to talk about this whole concept of rulership and the head of the household and how that plays itself out, right? Because if you're waiting for your partner to do something that they are not going to do,
or aren't equipped to do, or equally as equipped to do as you may be,
you become frustrated. Mm-hmm. So this is a joint effort. Yes, when talking about the order of the family, God, Christ, I am the head of the household, then my wife, then the children. But how does that play itself out? Because if you're drenched in chauvinism, then now your wife feels imprisoned in the relationship. So this whole concept of submission, we got to talk about. Because submission for a lot of women is almost like a curse word because of the way it's been played out in most households. So we believe in submission. But our thing is, submission is not gender specific. Just as wives are required to submit to their higher authority, we as husbands, as men, are required to submit to our higher authority. And a woman would never have a problem submitting to a man as long as that man was submissive to his God. Because when you're submissive to your God and you're getting wisdom and guidance and direction in terms of how to love that wife and to, protect that household, everyone wins. So the way it works in our house is this. Yes, technically by position, I'm the head. Now, I want to give you a quick comparative analysis between me as the head of my household, or us as men as the head of our households, and the President of the United States as the head of the nation. Now, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. Does the President know everything? Of course not. Can the President do everything? Absolutely not. That's why the President has a council, has a cabinet, has individuals that represent different levels of expertise that he can quickly rely on to get information and make a decision. Now, yes, as the head of the nation, he makes the ultimate decision, but he leans on his counsel to get the right answer to make the right decision. Likewise, as heads of the home, we're expected to just know everything and do everything, but that's just ridiculous. We don't have all the answers. So it would be wise that we have a wise counsel of individuals that we can lean on. So Danielle and I, we have an argument about something. We've reached an impasse in the relationship. We can't get on one accord. What do? Do I crack my hammer down and say, woman, submit, and that's the way it is? That ain't gonna work. So what we've decided to do is, as a couple, we come together and we submit to another individual who we consider to be wise counsel, who has expertise in the areas that we do not. So when it comes to finances, if we're struggling, we together will submit to our financial advisor. If we're having struggles in our marriage, we together will submit to our marriage mentor. So whatever the issue is, if we can't come together on one accord, we rely on our counsel. That is a form of government you want in your home and for your marriage, because it represents sustainability. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that, your marriage will break and it will fall.
You said it. I think you covered it.
Go ahead.
Very good.
Let's go to the next question. Hi, Hasani. I have an issue that stems from the term government. My wife allows her mom's feelings and her issues to dictate how she supports me recently. When we dated, it was, I guess, all us. And I am not mad at her because her mom, in my opinion, just lacks tact. All right. This is a huge problem. Now, when dealing with the top 5 problems that kill marriages, money is 1, sex is another, communication is 3rd, children are 4th, in-laws are number 5. Ding, 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 ding.
The Bible talks about leaving and cleaving, and there should be no outside influence that is, especially that's not on one accord with what you guys believe and what you've set up in your relationship, that's influencing one person over the other. It's just like having children and you're allowing a child to divide you. Well, you know, if mommy says no, I know I can get daddy to say yes. Well, an in-law can be a child in that same respect if not put into place. And it is the responsibility of the child of the parent to respectfully and lovingly put that relationship into its proper position and place. Mom and dad can definitely be an advisor and give good advice and things of that nature, but we should not allow them to bring divisiveness into our relationship. You need to stand together as one and have one opinion and one standard in your relationship that everybody on the outside knows what it is. Mom, dad, and anybody else with a unsolicited opinion.
So there's a principle that we believe in, that we teach as Couples Academy, and this is it. You want to write this down. This is deep. Partners first, parents second. Now that works 2 ways. I'll say it again. Partners first, parents second. So when we came together, we got married first, then we had children, right? So oftentimes when we get married and have children, we take off husband and wife hat and put on mommy and daddy hat. Everything becomes about the children, right? Children first and then our relationship. That's out of order. Likewise, we allow the influences of our parents to dictate what we do in our household, because you come from that culture, that tradition, that way of doing and thinking, and oftentimes it clashes with your partner. And so what happens is, if mama says something or if daddy says something, you side with your parent over your partner. And what happens is, there's so many couples that are experiencing emotional abandonment in their own marriage, because it seems as though you're taking the side of everybody else but me. I'm the one you live with. I'm the one you sleep with. I'm the one you wake up with. But it seems as though when it comes to any and everything, you side with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers, with everybody else, and you leave me left behind. And so oftentimes the issues of the parent sometimes lean so heavy on the relationship because we're siding with them. But there needs to become a united front between you and your partner. That's the power of one. See, it's a mystery. This marriage is a mystery, but something happens when 1 + 1 now equals 1. Right?
And it is a process too. Just understand and be sympathetic to the partner whose parents are bringing opinions into the relationship. It's a process, especially if it's a newer marriage, because you're coming from a situation where you've always had the advice of that person. Maybe you relied heavily on their opinions, and they're used to it too. So they're even going through transition. They're used to being able to, for lack of a better word, maybe control you, or maybe help you structure your decisions in life. And so everybody's going through transition. So it's not like you should expect your spouse to just, drop the guillotine, cut off your mother or father. Whatever they say no longer applies. No. There needs to be a way that you sit down and figure out how to sit down with mom or dad and let them know, we've come together and we've seen how this is causing a problem in our relationship, and we know that you want the best for us, and we know that that's really what this is all about, that you have our best intentions at heart. But for us, we need to move forward in this way. And so you want to handle it delicately, sensitively, and with compassion.
Last thing, I have a couple who I've been counseling for about 5 months, and all of a sudden things, great, but all of a sudden I get a phone call that they're about to divorce. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about, divorce? Well, guess what? It was a family issue they never brought up, and it had everything to do with in-laws on both sides. So I said, you know what? We can't even make it another week. So this whole concept of weekly counseling is thrown out the door. We need to do a private marriage intensive. So I took them away for 72 hours and literally knocked out every single issue they had regarding in-laws and created a plan. So we're giving you good tidbits and nuggets of information, but to really drill deep and create and craft a plan that will work in your marriage, that is the purpose of, counseling and coaching and things of that nature. So I encourage those that are struggling with that to do that. Here's the next question. Your wife mentioned be comfortable in the bedroom. My spouse has a nice figure and I don't. So it's hard for me to be free. Your wife said our spouse should see our bodies anyway. Can you elaborate on that?
What I was saying is that your spouse sees you in 3D. You don't even see yourself in 3D because you're looking forward and you got to bend your neck around in those three-sided mirrors at the supermarket or at the shopping centers and all. So you don't really see yourself the way that your spouse sees you. So you should know that your spouse has seen everything that you consider an imperfection, and most likely they don't see it as an imperfection the way that you do. You're your most critical critic. You are. You're the one that's in the mirror looking at a pore that's the size of a pinhead that nobody can see with their physical eyes. So I'm saying to you that, if you in your opinion, your spouse has a nice physique, he, in his opinion, probably assumes that you have a nice physique. So I want you to be free to accept that. Believe what your spouse says, If your spouse desires you and wants you to be free and let go, then just take a chance and do that. It will feel unnatural. It will feel uncomfortable. But the more that you do it and challenge yourself, the more comfortable you'll feel. And then you will begin to enjoy sex, and you will enjoy the freedom of being able to get naked in front of your spouse and not feel a sense of shame or any of that. It is a process. But I tell you, there are so many couples that, it's a rule that you should make love in the dark. The lights better go off or nothing's going down. And that's something that we should work on, because what it really is it's a lack of intimacy. You should practice, having sex with your spouse and looking them in the eye. See how long you can do that. And that'll tell you a lot about the level of intimacy that you truly have. So stop covering up your body. Own what you have. It takes time. Listen, I'm 38. I'll be 39 in October. I'm a young woman. And I've always heard women say, girl, when you get 30, you're just going to be free. And that didn't happen. When you get 30, you're just not going to care about anything. You just have all this confidence. Well, that didn't happen. It's a decision. It's a conscious decision that you have to make. I have made the decision to accept, work on it, work on whatever I'm not happy about, but accept where I'm at and love where I'm at and be free with where I'm at. Because it creates an environment where both of you enjoy your sex life so much better when there's not all the shame and inhibition that's unnecessary.
And let me give you 2 practical things that will help you walk this thing through. Number 1, get naked alone by yourself. Just get comfortable in your own skin when you're by yourself.
That is good.
Practice that. As uncomfortable as it may be, the more you do something, Danielle was talking about riding a bike, the more you do it, the easier it gets. So that's number 1. Number 2, at the end of it all, at the root of it all, you're talking about insecurity, right? You're insecure about yourself. And the reason why you're insecure is that you're allowing certain thoughts and certain statements to repeat over in your mind again and again and again like a broken record. So if you keep telling yourself, I'm ugly, I don't have a good body, and that message is reverberating constantly day in and day out, well, check this out. The Bible says that faith cometh by what? Hearing, and hearing the word of God. So let's take the principle of that statement and break it down. Let's throw off God for a second and look at the principle. Faith cometh by hearing and hearing. Faith cometh by hearing and hearing. A repetition, not hearing something once, but hearing it again and again and again. The question becomes, what are you hearing in your own mind? If you have nothing but negative thoughts, negative thinking, right? And that's all you're hearing, you're building up so much belief and faith in it that it's dictating how you live your life. So in essence, we believe in creating new scripts, right? And whatever that positive script is, say that again and again and again. It's called the power of auto-suggestion. And when you're constantly saying the right thing again and again and again, you begin to believe it. And the more you begin to believe it, you begin to act that thing out.
And you know what works for me? Like just flipping what he's saying. What works for me is what the Bible says, casting down those thoughts that do not line up with the Word of God. So when I hear something that's not lining up, I just turn off the thought. Like, you can feed those thoughts and allow yourself to run amok with comparisons like we talked about earlier. You've got all this this imagery coming at you from the media on what you should look like, how you should act, and all these things. And you've got to just get down to brass tacks and accept yourself for who you are and love yourself for who you are. So when you have those comparison thoughts coming in your mind, whenever the moment is, if it's right before you're going to be intimate with your spouse and all of a sudden the insecurities come in, you've got to change those thoughts, turn them off. And the Bible tells us that we can do that. So that's pretty much what we're talking about with that. Yeah.
And in addition to that, if you don't like who you are, change. You have the ability to change it. Don't get so caught up in your whack emotions and whack thinking process that you do nothing about it. You got to get up off your behind and do something.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true. If you don't like what you're seeing in the mirror, you can work on it. Because now it's one thing if you just never liked it, and you just don't like yourself, and that's a greater issue. But if it's a physical thing, I've gained a few pounds, you can work on that. If it's you don't like your hair, you can change that. So there are things that you can do to feel better about yourself.
Yes. Do not be weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Okay, well, what's due season? Due season is the expected manifestation of what you did prior to your due season coming. So in order to get to your due season, you've got to do.
Something.
So do comes before do. Do, D-O, comes before do, D-U-E. So the question is, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hope that makes sense. All right. Next question. My husband is a hard worker. He's a truck driver. Interestingly enough, five of my clients are truck drivers. Yeah. He's a truck driver, and I barely see him. And when he does come home, I'm aroused, but I don't want to bother him because I know that he's tired. But when I do try, he doesn't get an erection. He said it's because his problem, and he's too tired and his mind is not into it. I'm frustrated because it's been over years since we had sex. I don't say anything about it because I don't want to destroy his manhood. Mm-hmm. Powerful, powerful question. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? So I have a lot of truck drivers. And when you're on the road for hours and hours and days and weeks, it's physically taxing on your body. And so I work through my couples with spending quality time, resting and relaxing. And once you've built up your energy level, engaging in intimacy. Now, intimacy doesn't always mean sex, just quality time together, mm-hmm. right? So it's more than just a physical thing. It's also a mental, emotional, and psychological thing. Right. And all of those things have to be in perfect alignment in order for you to give the best of who you are. So I ask my truck drivers and say, listen, when you think about your energy level, when is it at its best? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Well, because of my schedule, I'm a night person. Okay, great. You're a night person. I have other people who work different types of shifts. Like I have one couple, the husband comes, he leaves work 8 in the morning, and then he's a full-time student as well, and balancing work and school, sometimes he comes back at, say, 1 in the morning. But at that time, it is best for him. So his wife, who's home, accommodates his time schedule by allowing, the husband to wake her up in the middle of the night to engage in sex. That works for them. So you have to, once again, negotiate and figure out what works best for you. Now, and I'll get to you in a second. It's your responsibility as a partner to give your partner sexual fulfillment. But if you're tired and lethargic, that's the purpose of the calendar, to begin to plan. We work crazy hours. I wish every day we could be sexually fulfilled, but that's not real. We have 4 kids, we have businesses, we're traveling, so we have to map it out on a calendar and make sure that we make it a priority. Because we do that, we're able to get what we need.
And there's a lot of anxiety that the person that is not interested in having sex deals with when they know there's an expectation that's unmet in their spouse. And so when that, truck driver is coming home, he knows that this is the expectation of his wife, but he's exhausted. He doesn't know when he's going to feel like having sex. He just avoids. So now you avoid touching each other. You avoid looking at each other in the eyes. You avoid all types of intimacy. You won't hold hands. You won't have a long conversation where you're looking at each other in the eyes, because God forbid she gets the idea that I'm ready to do something. And that is why it's so important to negotiate a time when that's going to work. When he comes home, maybe he doesn't have the expectation. He can take the whole day off, but he knows that the following day there'll be some time for that. So it's really important to schedule it out and plan it so that even the person that's not interested doesn't have to deal with that anxiety of feeling like they have to avoid their spouse all the time because they know what they want and they're not prepared to give it to them.
Next question. My wife and I are over 60 and I can't keep up with her sexually. Help me. What do I do? I love her, but I feel bad because I can't perform like I once did. That's very common. It's so interesting. We were just talking about that, how when you reach a certain age, it seems like the roles switch on us, right? So men they reach their sexual peak much younger than women, and then all of a sudden it begins to slowly but surely dissipate. But as women age, that's when their sexual peak is awakened. It's so unfair. So we really have to learn to be sensitive to each other. And this is where, let me tell you something. At the end of the day, I say this all the time. Understand the context in which I'm saying this. You don't really have a financial problem. You don't really have a in-law problem or a parenting problem or a sexual problem. You have a communication problem. It is your inability to effectively communicate. And a lot of times when it comes to sex, we rather not even have the conversation. We rather not address the issue. We avoid each other. We become like 2 passing ships in the night, and never the 2 shall meet. And because we don't properly and effectively deal with the issue, it gets worse over the course of time. And I believe that if we were more open and honest and entered into intimate conversation, remember we talked about that session 1, then a lot of these issues can be resolved. But sometimes it comes down to ego and pride and, my manhood and things of that nature, or my womanhood. I don't feel like a woman because I can't, whatever the case may be. And a lot of those insecurities creep up and create such a distance between us and our partner. Now, if you have great conversation and you are able to talk, this is where you have to step outside of your box. And what that means is that you've got to be willing to try something new. Someone once said that by the time you reach the age of 35, every thought, every reaction, every belief system, every whatever you are has been properly developed. And then from that point on, you're operating in autopilot, meaning that you don't have to use your mind and intellectually think about anything because everything is based upon instinct. Because you've trained your life over those 35 years to be who you are. So he says that most of us throughout the course of our day are living unconsciously because we're not consciously involved in our day because it's our old habits, our old patterns, and everything else. So what I'm saying is, fine, you are now experiencing something new, but you're operating in your old selves. You have to intentionally become someone new. You have to break the habit of being yourself. Whether that means being addicted to your thoughts, your emotions, and your way of doing things, you have to be open to discovering new things. So listen, there's a lot of married couples who are Christians who go to certain stores and shops where they can get things that may enhance the experience. Because if certain things aren't working that well, you get things to accommodate. And keep in mind, as men, we have 11 external things that we can use. In addition to our penis, we have our 10 fingers. If you really learn how to use your hands, if you learn how to use different parts of your body to bring pleasure to your partner, it's more than just penetration. Sex is more than penetration. That's a part of it, but not all of it. In fact, think about it. A lot of women say that the foreplay is the best part of the process. But if you have a porn mentality and all you think is penetration equates to sex, you're wrong. Let me tell you something. Romance and foreplay begins at the beginning of the day. It's how you greet your partner. It's the nice things that you do. It's the gifts that you give, the compliments. All of that is a part of the sexual experience. So sex is more than just physical. It's emotional. It's very sensual in its nature if you step outside of your thinking and try something new. And like I said before, go to the doctor. If it means getting medication, getting treatment, getting shots, whatever the case may be, to build up your stamina, your endurance, do it. Do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you begin to do these things, you'll see a major difference in your marriage. Anything you want to add to that?
I'm good.
Now, those are all the questions that came in, but I wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask your question if you don't have any issues asking a question publicly, because we do have time and I want to make sure that we do address whatever questions you have. So I'm going to give you the freedom to text right now, 678-200-8996, or just ask your question. Or maybe you want to ask a question that others that you know who aren't here today may be experiencing, and maybe after getting the answer today, you can pass that information off to them. Wait. Let's let that motorcycle leave first. All right, go ahead.
How important is it how we speak to our spouse?
It's very important. The question is how important is it in terms of how we speak to our spouse? I'm going to give you something, and then I'll let Danielle pick up. So number one, communication is broken into 3 parts. Okay? Write this down. This is so critically important. The first component of communication are your words. Write down words. What you say. Number 2, the second component of communication is what we call tonality. Tonality. How you say what you say. Number 3, the third component is what we call your facial expressions and body language. Now, interestingly enough, your words account for 7% of your communication. Your tonality accounts for 23% of your communication. Your facial expressions and body language account for 70% of your communication. So some of us who are convinced that we're the best communicators in the world, because I say what's on my mind. I know how to articulate everything that I want to say. I say the message is given clearly. Yes, 7% of your communication are words, and you've mastered that. But how you say what you say has gotten you into trouble. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, the messages that are communicated with our tone contradict the message that is given with our words, or our body language contradicts our words. Let me give you a quick example. If I were to say, I love you, you would believe it. But if I were to say, I love you, wouldn't be believable. My tonality, my facial expression, my body language contradicts the message that came out of my mouth. So oftentimes, our tone and our delivery gets in the way of what it is that we say. That was my issue for a long time. In addition to being critical, it was how I would say things. Because I come from a very expressive, background where we say what we say. We use our hands. Our pitch goes up. And I'm doing all of this, not realizing how aggressive my communication was. And she's like this, like, golly, Joker, calm down. Just say what you got to say. And so I had to learn how, and I'm still learning and perfecting in those areas, how to say what I say, because my message is not received. Then what was the point of saying it in the beginning?
And you know your style of communication. So, we've got to be willing to control our own habits. You know when you say something a certain kind of way that it's going to affect him or her the way you want it to. It's going to hit that chord. It's going to tick them off. It's going to frustrate them. So you just have to be mindful of that, because it is so much more your body language and how you say what you say that we, especially women, read into. Because we have a certain intuitiveness anyway. God gave us that gift. We kind of can read between the lines and feel things and know things. And so we can tell your disingenuousness. And if you're the type of person, if you're anything like me, and I'm somebody that I like to see that you are genuine. I like to see people are real. I'd rather know that you don't like me to my face than that you don't like me behind closed doors. Just give it to me real and raw. I don't know if that's the Jersey girl in me, but just give it to me real and raw. And so if I am sensing that what you're giving me is not genuine and 100%, I'm checking out everything. How's your body position? What face did you make? What's the tonality in what you're saying? So it's very important, especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics, to be mindful of how you're saying what you're saying. Because ultimately, it's your goal to get your message well received. You're not coming to your spouse to talk about something or deal with any issue that you don't want them to receive and hopefully see your perspective. So it's going to be about how you deliver it to keep that channel of communication open so you don't close them down. So it's really important.
I just wrote an article that I posted the other day entitled, "Help, My Mouth is Killing My Marriage." And I talked about the verbal assassin and how many of us are verbal assassins and know how to kill our marriage with our words, and how to begin to pull back. And, even the Bible talks about in Proverbs, all throughout that book, how the law of kindness should be on your tongue. And, there's scripture after scripture after scripture. Matter of fact, one of our books, I have around 30 scriptures just on communication according to the word. And if you just meditate on the scripture and get it in your spirit, it can take a hold of you and change the way in which you communicate. So it's very, very important that you begin to do that. I have another question that just came in. Very good. I have a trust issue with my husband because of broken promises. I don't know how to recapture the ability to open myself to him. What can I do? Thank you for asking that question. I would say, now I deal with a lot of infidelity, as I mentioned, and 90% of our clients struggle with that. So a part of the marital recovery process is restoring the trust. But you cannot restore trust if there is no transparency. You cannot restore the trust if there is no openness and honesty. So I don't know specifically what the issue is, but I'll give you a couple things that may be able to help in terms of a trust issue. So let's just say it may not even be infidelity, but a trust was broken. And there's information that you're holding or keeping from your partner, because some of us have a tendency to do that. So we keep secrets in the relationship, but you want me to trust you. You've lied, you've deceived, you've been dishonest, but you want me to trust you. So in figuring things out, for a person whose trust has been broken, it needs to be restored. Transparency is a part of that. So what does that mean? Like, I know so many couples that have devices like cell phones and tablets and social media platforms and emails, and they shut and lock their partners outside of having access to their world. So we have compartmentalized our lives by saying, fine, I have my personal life with Danielle, but everything else out of that on the outside world, that's me. So we don't exchange passwords, or anything. And so the things that we're doing, hiding behind technology, could be destroying our marriage, and our partner has no clue. So I've had so many of those issues where I've had to work through couples and have them share access to such accounts and devices so that there's a level of transparency. If I'm hiding something from you under the guise of I'm just a private person, we have a problem, because there should be no aspect of your life that is hidden from me, because we are one. You know what I mean? And so if you don't have that level of transparency, there's a major problem. So the policy of radical honesty is what we teach. Radical honesty means being transparent about your past, about your present, and about your future thoughts and agendas. And when you have a level of transparency through the policy of radical honesty, it works for the relationship. If there have been disappointments or broken promises that have caused you to pull back and not be trustful, then that's where the partner has to be consistent in doing the right thing.
That's right.
See, now trust is a two-way street. So let's just say the person who broke the trust is doing all the right things, but you're still holding on to the past and you haven't let go. Well, golly, all of his good intention will never be honored or respected or identified because you're holding on to the past. So you have to make a decision to trust. You have to make a decision first, and then over the course of time, that trust will be restored. So it's a two-way street. Meanwhile, there's so many people who quickly forgive. We call it cheap forgiveness, where they don't address any issue. There's no accountability. There's no change in the partner for the wrong that he or she did. We just quickly forgive and move past it. But yet, we're still holding on to the residue of the past. So trust and the forgiveness process literally is a process that takes place over the course of time after the initial decision has been made. Now, once again, to try this on your own is quite challenging.
Right.
That's why we encourage counseling, because it really works wonders. So I hope that kind of answered that question. Did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was going to say that, the person that is breaking the trust really needs to commit to the process of proving that they can be trusted. When Hasani and I struggled earlier in our relationship, it wasn't infidelity, it wasn't anything like that. It was just tonality and just being critical. But if somebody says, okay, I'm going to work on my critical, I'm going to change, you're right, and they keep doing it, and they keep doing it, it could be something as simple as that, or whatever issue it is within the relationship that causes the person to just say, whatever, like, I don't believe it, he's never going to change. So that person has really got to make a commitment to work on proving that they can change.
Great answer. What other questions? We have a good 12 minutes left. I want to be mindful of your time, but be able to get in any last questions that may be on your mind. Okay.
I have a question. Now, you just spoke about time and change. Should you put a time limit or expectation upon that change?
That's a very good question. So, a lot of people can use the whole, change takes time. Give me some time. Give me some time. I'm trying. I'm working on it. And a lot of times that's an excuse, and we're not putting forth the effort. And so my thing is this. If you truly have a desire to change, it's proven through your deeds and your actions. Some change is not automatic and instamatic. Certain things God delivers us from like that. Other things take place over the course of time. But if you're showing effort and you're working towards those things, you can experience change, even though it may take a little bit longer than other, areas of your life. An excellent book I would highly recommend that you read. And I've shared this with all of my clients and all of, our customers, everybody associated with us. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Joe Dispenza. And if you take your issue, whatever it is, and read the book from that perspective, it will help. So let me just give you a quick technique that will help you. I don't care what your problem is. Get in your mind right now, everybody in this room, get in your mind that one issue that you wish you could overcome. And I'm going to tell you how to walk your way through it. So number one, in the book, he talks about how he spends his morning. He says, every single day that I wake up, I ask myself two questions. Question number one, who is the person that I no longer want to be? I want to think about who is that person I no longer want to be. So you start thinking about all your negative qualities and attributes and behaviors, and you write that down in a list of all the people you don't want to be. Now, this is not a one-time experiment. He asks himself the question every single day, because every day that he asks himself that question, he should be able to see that that person he no longer wants to be is in the distant past because he's broken away from that person. The second question he asks himself, is, what is the most ideal version of myself? So when I'm operating at my best, who is that person? What does that person do? How does that person show up? So when I'm dealing with my children, what's the most ideal version of myself? When I'm on my job, frustrated at work, what's the most ideal version of myself? When I'm dealing with my wife and frustrated and just tired, don't want to deal with it, what's the most ideal version of myself? And you visually see yourself operating in all of those scenarios as your most ideal version. Now, you say, well, really? Well, wait a minute. I thought it was Joshua chapter 1 verse 8 that says, the book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt what? Meditate on it therein day and night, and observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Here's a scripture that's telling you to visualize, to observe yourself doing the will of God. Just like you want to see yourself in your visualization, see yourself showing up as your best self in all of the scenarios that you failed at previously. And the more you can begin to get a glimpse of it, the more real it becomes to you. Athletes have something called, sports psychology. One of the things that they do, they practice in their mind, competing at high levels. They see themselves winning. They see themselves crossing the line. They see themselves throwing the ball in the hole. They see themselves running across the finish line. And the more you begin to see it and believe in it, it becomes real to you. You begin to walk out in your life what you've convinced yourself of is possible in your mind. So when you take that same approach to overcoming an issue, a habit, a vice, a challenge, an idiosyncrasy, it will manifest great change and transformation in your life and in your marriage.
So true.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. I think we have time for one more good question. Wow, were we that good? All right. Well, let me ask you a question, since there are no more questions. How many of you, by a show of hands, understood what you heard here today? If you just understood what you heard, let me see your hands. All right, hands down. How many of you, by a show of hands, agree with what you heard to be the truth today? Let me see your hands. Look at the hands. Well, it is our prayer that the information that you heard will not just be something that you hear and then shelve. That is why we took breaks and gave you actual homework, right? Tasks to do with your partner. So whatever you didn't finish, I want you to take it home and I want you to work on these tools. And I want you to revisit these tools. If you want to build a house, you need more than a hammer and nails to build a house. Sometimes you need some machinery, right? You need some tools to build that house. Well, we've given you tools because prior to today, maybe you've been using inappropriate tools or no tools at all, but you're trying to build a great marriage. Well, just these tools alone will help you in a major way of creating emotional connection again in your relationship in order to have that in-love feeling, sexual fulfillment, communication resolved in certain areas in order to take your relationship forward. Last thing I want to mention, because I forgot, Pastor, and that was about spiritual intimacy. Let me tell you something. You have to make a decision that the Bible is going to be final authority in your marriage. That does not mean that we use the Bible as a tool of manipulation and control. That's not what we do. And oftentimes we do that. It means having a new mind and reading the scripture for what it says, not using the scripture in a way that we want to use it that makes us on top and our partners on bottom, right? So bringing that marriage negotiation and that fresh thought in will help. Now, Danielle comes from like the faith-based movement type of church. I come from a holiness, apostolic, Pentecostal type of church. We come together. We have conflicting views, but we didn't allow that to get in the way. We said, you know what? We come from different traditions. why don't we relearn together, right? And see where we as a couple stand. Because we're not going to allow someone's doctrine or interpretation of the word, because sometimes opinions are preached, not the real word. We're not going to allow people's opinions to dictate what happens in this household. We're going to take this word, we're going to read together, we're going to study together, we're going to pray together, and what thus saith the Lord to us, that's what we're going to use to govern our lives. So spiritual intimacy is more than just going to church on Sunday and thinking that you've done your part. Spiritual intimacy means having your own personal relationship with God. If you're praying to your God, if you're meditating, if you're using devotional time to build a strong relationship with Him, it's no problem coming together with your spouse to pray. It's so ironic that we will pray in church publicly and pray for the people, but won't pray with our own partner. That's crazy. That's crazy. So I want you to begin to incorporate that in your relationship. Get away from just religious acts. Okay, I went to church. I paid my tithes. I gave to the poor. I did, homeless shut. Yeah, you want to do those things. But you want to become spiritually connected with your God and with your partner. Keep this in mind. There's 3 relationships we've got to learn how to master. The relationship that we have with God, that's our vertical relationship. The relationship that we have with ourselves, that is our internal relationship. And the relationship that we have with our partners, that is our horizontal relationship. When we find the perfect balance and blend with all 3, life is wonderful. But what happens is, because all we know is what the relationship with our God should be, and we kind of dismiss our partners, isn't it interesting how some Christians, the most saved, the most holiest, the most righteous Christians are some of the most miserable, the most mean and surly and disrespectful partners to their spouses. So we got all this love of God that's vertical, but we don't demonstrate it in our horizontal relationships. And so listen, how can you love a God that you cannot see and don't love your spouse who you do see every single day? So the love of God and the spiritual connection that enters into your relationship should change, the trajectory of that relationship and bring in a level of peace and harmony and tranquility that you need to take your relationship forward. So I'm glad that you allowed us to communicate with you today and to give you a couple of nuggets that would help you. There's so much more that we could do, but just don't have time to do it. But this should take you well on your way to having the relationship you ultimately desire.
Yeah, Lazarus was dead, wasn't he? He was dead and he was stinking, when he was risen. And I want you to know that your relationship, no matter where you are, the status, however many years you've been married, can be resurrected. You can have compassion, you can have love, you can have intimacy, even if it's in the most stinking, nastiest, lowest place ever. You can resurrect it. I can't even believe. There was a time when I just didn't believe that once you leave that romantic season, I didn't think you could resurrect it. I thought that once it's gone, it's gone. You just have to move through your relationship and figure it out. And he was a believer. He believed that you could raise it again. He believed that you could have that fulfillment in your relationship. And he made me a believer because he was persistent. It only takes one of you to make a decision to change. If you change one little bit, one little degree, you'll find that you have altered the entire distance that you would have gone if you had stayed on that straight path. So it only takes a little tiny change, one little change at a time, that will transform your relationship. So I want you to have faith. I want you to carry the mantle of marriage, be a representation in your community and in your church and within your family for what marriage stands for. And if there are issues, because we all have issues, Hasani and I don't stand here perfect. We don't stand here without any issues. But we are constantly working on our relationship, constantly bettering our relationship, just like you would do with anything in this life that you want to do. If you want to get a raise on your job, you're going to go back to school and get some kind of re-education so that you know how to do and so you can get the promotion. So be committed to work on your marriage and get promoted in your marriage. And promotion is just longevity in your marriage, having a marriage where you actually do part at death. That's the goal. And we're the footprint of God's plan on earth. And we need to represent that to the fullest.
Awesome.
Now, Hasani, how do we get the tape of this session today?
email it to you, and you will send it to all of those that are here today. You know what? Let's do something else. I'm not giving anybody anything unless they text me right now, or by the end of the day. If you text me and say, I want the video, I'll send you the video. Now, when you text me the video, when you text that you want the video, you have to send me your email in text. Put your name and your email, and that way I can include you in our system so that you can continue to get not only this video, but a lot of other great information from us as well. So I'll give you a master copy, but I want all of you in this room, text me your name, your email, I want the video, and you will get it. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Okay,
have a good day.
bye.